in the next panel, we're going to go back ashore to see what the ideal port for offshore renewables might look like. And for that, I'd like to invite John MacAskill, Jean-Rémy Villageois, Sandrine GOURLET, and Laurent Verdier onto the stage, please. Bonjour. Excusez-moi. Bonjour, excusez-moi. Hello. Bonjour. Nice to meet you. Okay, shake all the hands now. Bonjour. Hello. Hi. Thank you very much for joining us here today. Now, let's kick the session off with you, John MacAskill. Oh my God. You're Group Growth Director at Marine Consultants ABL Group, and you've got the overview. You can paint us a picture of where port infrastructure in Europe stands right now and how well we are prepared for the upcoming offshore renewables boom.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for inviting me here today as well. Delighted to be here. So in terms of there's two pictures. There's part of our industry that has a number of ports and harbours that are well established: Crookshaven, Emsburg, Saint-Nazaire, Hull in the UK, because they've been servicing offshore wind floating fixed projects for quite a while. So they're pretty well established. There's a number of O&M marine ports, but for floating, it's a lot more fragmented. It reflects the floating market somewhat. So the one...
Do you have slides?
Oh, no slides.
No slides.
No slides.
No slides.
Yeah. So the floating projects we've had to date have used sort of multi-port. They've just looked at the port infrastructure, they've done shortlists, they've then had a number of ports, and they've just needed to work with what they have, but they've been working with 1 modules up to 3 and arrays, etc. So looking ahead, there's a number of ports in a number of markets that are looking at floating or flow projects, but there's a number of things that these ports need to actually consider. The first one is that you're going to have to be flexible enough for a number of different foundation types. You're not going to have a luxury of looking at, say, a certain kind of foundation type for projects 1, 2, 3, and 4. Projects 1 and 3 might be quite different. The peaks and troughs will be different. The modularity of it, because a port might need to swing from production to integration, sorry. So there needs to be some kind of flexible and modularity to it. Now, there's a number of ports that are sort of doing this early stage, looking at what a floating port could be for the clusters that are around. And obviously in France, we've got Marseille-Fos, we've got Saint-Nazaire, etc. But they're still a long way from being ready for floating wind. But the market's not ready yet either, and that's that kind of balancing act between the two.
So there's some time to adapt still, would you say, for the ports?
Yes, but it takes time to develop a port. So the construction phase of a port is maybe going to be 150 to 350 million euros. So you're going to have to raise that finance, and you're only going to raise that finance for construction with some kind of project certainty. And at the moment, which projects of sort of, half a megawatt or half a gigawatt or a gigawatt has that level of certainty? Which ones have consenting and offtakes? Not many. So the ports are moving forward incrementally using funding either from themselves or from government bodies to do some extra studies, to do some engineering work, some design work, to start getting them sort of ready whilst the market is also progressing. I mean, if you look at France, you've got a number of leases that aren't out yet. So what kind of projects with what kinds of technologies do me as a port need to look at. So there's a level of uncertainty on technology, on clusters, and on timing. So it will take time, but the chances are that there's going to be one port that gets there first in a market, and that port will end up taking a lot of the actual initial projects.
When you look at the UK, how far advanced is that transformation process right now?
A little bit different, and I think that there's been a nice change. So in Scotland, I've seen a nice change over the last couple of years with de-risking of early stage finance with bodies like the Scottish National Investment Bank. And they also pull in some funds from the National Wealth Fund or the Infrastructure Fund. So that's government public investment, and that could be drawn down as either an equity stake or as debt. So that's them taking that sort of high level debt with the least risk. But so what this does is it allows a port looking for capital in the capital market. They're also going in with government to take a little bit of the slice of that risk. And for an investor coming in with a government body that is going to sit alongside them as an investor gives a level of comfort. So a 20 million euro investment, for instance, the value of that coming from a government body like SNIB or the National Wealth Fund, it's more than the straight value of that investment, because you've got the government body invested in that port, and it's the same government that's looking at consenting, that's looking at offtake, so they've got skin in that game. So in Scotland, that has happened with the likes of, so Ardersier as well, which is more maybe a nice accident. So Ardersier is looking at becoming a major offshore port. So it's decommissioning as well as flow, as well as hydrogen. And Quantum Energy Partners in 2022 decided to invest £300 million in that, with 100 million from SNIB and the National Wealth Fund. Now, they've broken ground. They've started on the construction costs without an anchor project, which you wouldn't do. Now, they thought they would have an anchor project, so they decided bit by bit to continue. Now, if they were doing that business case today instead of 2022, they might not do that. And that's where most projects are. Most projects wouldn't do that without having some kind of anchor project. So I think Scotland's quite fortunate that they've got a couple of ports beginning to break ground. But some of that has been helped by government investment, co-investment.
You told me before this conference that government support was really, really crucial to get this going, right? Because once you've got public money, private money is going to follow, especially if there are no confirmed projects just yet.
Yeah, so the investment just mentioned is a good example. I mean, we had a meeting with a port investor a couple of weeks ago, looking at a Scottish port, looking at a potential range of Scottish ports to invest in. And the ability for them to look, now they're going to invest their own money getting up to construction. They will not go into construction without having a contract in place, but they will get that ready for to have that discussion with a developer. But they are a lot more attracted to the UK and to Scotland because there is the possibility of co-investment. And there's co-investment up during the DevEx phase, but also potential finance during the construction phase in the way of debt. And that is significant. It's helping not just ports, it's helping the likes of XLCC, which is the startup heavy HVDC cable supplier. So it helps with all that large tier one supply chain, whether it's port infrastructure or anything else.
All right. Well, the harbour of Saint-Nazaire, Nantes-Saint-Nazaire, has some experience already with offshore wind energy. You, Jean-Rémy Villageois, you're chair of the management board at Nantes-Saint-Nazaire, and your harbour has been the construction base for the 480 megawatt offshore wind farm Saint-Nazaire, which has been up and running since 2022, and the 496 megawatt development Noirmoutier, which is set to go live later this year normally. How did Nantes-Saint-Nazaire gear up to accommodate these projects?
Well, thanks for inviting me here, and it's a pleasure to be with such guys. Basically, very simply, we listen to the clients. They know what they want, and as a port, we are providing services, so we follow the clients. And they help us to improve in that way. They basically drove our investment and they drove our way of tackling the issues. So, number one, we listen to the clients and we do our homework. The first thing is engineering. We invested a lot of energy in re-engineering our keys and making them strong enough to support these heavy duties pieces, because they are much more heavier than what we are used to work with. So that's a different game. The second thing is we looked into the logistics. This is not just standard logistics. This is about industrial logistics. Basically, we go down to the hours. We integrate into the client needs, and that leads us to provide facilities, warehouses, in the vicinity of the erection base, so that the operations would be cost-effective. That's a shift in the typical way of handling by ports. One thing interesting is to provide land for installation of factories. We mainly rely on works, jobs that are temporary jobs, which the people who work in ports only work when there are port operations. But the interesting thing for a region such as Pays de la Loire is to have people working round the clock and throughout, years. And industry is able to do that. So we had to accommodate space, accommodate land, and made it available for industry players, wind turbines, fabrication, for example. This is a heavy investment, but it's an investment in time. And that are very strong points so that we can build on for the future. The last thing is, as you said, is investment. The ports in France are public actors, so we are in a very good position to drive public funds into our quays, our land, and our warehouse facilities. So we've been able to invest about 100 million euros in a period of 10 years, and this significant investment, which is supported by the French government and by the region Pays de la Loire, made us able to address the needs expressed by the clients. So land, money, and engineering, this is how we managed to tackle the issues.
And would you agree with what John just said, that you need public support in order to bring about private investment? You seemed a bit disagreeing with that, actually.
We can't disagree with that. I mean, these are just basic rules. The port is a public company. We are able to attract a public fund up to, say, 40–60%. The rest is our own investment, and for that we're looking at it just as a normal investor, and we're looking at our cash flow analysis so we can make it something really available and working. The good thing about investment in port is that far and above from the port investment, the industrial investments come after that, and the lever is like 1 to 5. If we put €1 in the keys, and we do it in a clever way, then the private sector will put 5 to 6 euros to develop industry. And they will create jobs. And these jobs will last. And these people will consume. So you can put €1 of public money, and the lever is about 10 to 12%. 10 to 12, which is 120%. That's a significant investment. There is no better way to spend your money. Put it in the ports that will attract industry with people. The people will live there, they will go to school, they will consume, they will go to the depth store, and you develop a new industry, a new country. Simple. And very cost effective.
You said that it's very cost effective indeed, but was there any resistance to that transformation process, or was it really straightforward? Political resistance, industrial resistance?
Well, we luckily in Saint-Nazaire we didn't face much resistance because we are building on an industrial network which is very strong. We have champions such as Chantier de l'Atlantique, we had GE, we have big players, major players, international players. But we also have small companies. We have a network called Neopolia. I mean, these people, they know how to handle small things, but also big things. We have the reaction time is very short. So these guys are able to tackle just any problem. So the port is just, at the forefront of the network. But we are only 1%. I mean, the real work is done by the guys who are really taking the risk and who are creating jobs and who are developing technologies, not the port.
And to what extent are you cooperating with other harbours? Or will you be cooperating with other harbours as well?
That's a good question. Many people say the ports should work together more. No port can do the whole work. Okay, it's very nice to say that, but I must admit, at the moment, we are not yet there. I mean, we do cooperate between us, especially
with Sandrine.
Yes. But we didn't decide that. The clients told us, well, you do the foundations, you do the masts, you do the turbines, and they will all be assembled in another location. So we like each other, but somebody else decided we should do
glad
something.
To hear that.
You see? So it's okay, but it's not yet, what we are looking for. The next stage is for the ports to really make a competitive offer, an industrial offer to the clients. So this is what we're working on. And that will be able to do it, I think, with the offshore floating operations. Because for the actual technologies, the ports are not the strongest point. When it comes to floating wind, the ports will become the integration base. No floating field could be installed without a combination of ports. So there is a game changer, and we are getting ready for that.
You are getting ready for floating offshore wind energy. You were going to talk to us about Ideol, which is a platform, a specific platform tailor-made for floating. Can you tell us a bit more? Can we see the slides? Yeah, there you go.
Sorry, guys, I had some pictures. My guys told me to put the slides, but I forgot. So this is where we are at the moment. This is actually, these pictures are taken from last week. I mean, and this is the future. So
this is the future. Okay. So this is not a real picture. So how does it work, your platform? Sorry? How does the platform, Ideol, what's the concept?
Ideol is our most significant project over, I think, probably since the port has been created. It's a 200 million euros investment, and with that investment, we want to put France, the whole country, at the forefront of the offshore wind in Europe. So it's very strong. This is going above, the ambition is not a port ambition, it's a country ambition. To do that, the country needs to have a facility, and this is Ideol. So the idea is to accommodate an industrial base, and that base will be able to integrate the floating components, the floaters, the masts, and the turbines, and the blades in the harbor. This is a significant step from what we are at the moment. Each one of these babies is 350 meters high. Each one is like an Eiffel Tower. And we just have to do 20 to 40 every year for over many years, so that I could pay the bank, the debt, because to do that, we are going to go for debt financing, about 90 million. So there is no way for failure. There is no room, sorry, for failure. So the facility is a quay, a very strong quay, 530 meters, giving access to the deep seas, to the ocean, with about 50-meter water depth. That quay is able to integrate the platform in about a week. So we receive the components from other ports, and the baby is assembled within a week before shipment to the field, and so on, and so on. And to do that, we need some wet storage facility, which you can see, which is quite limited. We need some floating quays for the vessel going in and out, and we need land, about 200,000 meters of land, specially reinforced, and we need a variety of quays, docks, and facilities to have the components integrated and coming up throughout the base. So it's a year-round operation, but the fabrication and the final assembly is from April to September, October. So this is it.
And looking ahead, what would you say from a port perspective, what are the main hurdles for you to gear up for floating offshore wind energy in the future?
Well, that's a very difficult question. The thing is, we are a bit in the, to develop a port facility such as this one, it's about 3 years of engineering, and the construction time is 3 to 5 years. And, well, we are pretty slow, so basically it's a 10 years development. But the market doesn't have 10 years to wait for. So we have to take risk, and we have to start our engineering much before actually the technology is made available. So we have to take risks, we have to engineer, we have to leave some room to the developers, and actually that's one of the issues we are working on. So the one big thing is engineering capability and the communication with the clients and the developers, so that the port offers a strong base for the future development. The second one is these are significant investments, and we need people to work on. We have a responsibility over these people, so we hire them, we train them, and we have to give them work. So we need visibility, we need work for 10 years, round the clock. So we need visibility from the governments. They have to give us the ability to develop to basically put people on the quays and in the factories, which we don't have at the moment. We built Guérande, as you said, in 2020. At the moment, we are doing Ile-Dieu, Noirmoutier. So basically, 3 years, we had no work to do. And the next step is going to be in 3 to 5 years. So the question is, what am I going to do with these guys? Should I keep them in the port? Or should they go somewhere else? If they go out, how to get them back? So this is a significant thing. We definitely need European governments to be very strong and to give us the field. So the architecture and the programmation, I mean, all this is extremely important. Otherwise, it will be a stop and go and failure. So that is very important. The last thing is in the old days, most of the work is being done offshore, so nobody cares. Unless if you have a house, facing the sea, it's okay. These things are going to be right in front of people living there. I mean, there are 200,000 people living in Saint-Nazaire, so they will be having all these Eiffel Towers in front of them every day. So they need to agree with that, and we need to talk to them, and we need to express and answer their questions. Their questions are fair, and we have to be able to discuss with the people. This is new to us. In the old days, the port never discussed with the people. We do our stuff, and we don't hear, we don't look. It's okay. This is impossible in Saint-Nazaire, so we need to do that, and we've been quite successful in doing it. It's a long process, but it's very important, so that we'll build. We must prepare some foundations which are strong enough to build the future.
So the industrial argument, if you were able to say the government is laying out a roadmap for the next 10 or 15 years, so can guarantee these jobs, and so it's worth putting up these alpha towers in front of your houses, that would help you?
Yes, definitely. In fact, we need more, because the business plan is, the ports, when we invest, it's 70 years, 80 years. So I cannot ask the government for 100 years of work, but at least 25 would be good enough as a start.
It's a nice start.
So we can do that and provide enough cash flow, because the industrial, they have many ideas. So if you do a good investment and it's driven by offshore wind, no doubt in 20 years, some people will find a very clever way to use that investment. So we have to basically trust our children. They will know how to use it, no doubt. I've been in Saint-Nazaire over the last 20 years. The most important piece of infrastructure is the Joubert dock. That dock was built 100 years ago, basically to provide a safe harbor protected from the tides. At this stage, no one even dream of having cruise vessels going through. And now we use it. Last week, we had 5 cruise vessels using. So we have to do it. We play our part, and we trust the next generation will use it in a clever way.
John, I'd like to ask you, when you look at this platform that we can see, and the audience maybe as well, is that something, the Ideol platform, offshore hub for floating offshore wind energy, is that something other ports elsewhere are also looking into, these, all-round platforms? Is your microphone working?
Every port, yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah, so every port is different, but yes, really enjoyed listening to the description of the port, but actually all the steps. I think it's a really good example of the complexity of the steps just to get to this point, which is still well beyond having a finished port. And every port is different. And I think that multi-port comment that you made is absolutely right. Every project is an art of the possible. So basically, not the perfect port will probably not exist, and it may not be available for you anyway. So there's always going to be a multi-port strategy within your project. But so the answer is yes, simply. It's a really, I was looking at this before I actually came, so I was doing some research, but I think also it demonstrates the real challenge that ports have, because we've just heard that of all of that complexity to get a port ready, a port that's going to need to work for 70 years. But we've not even talked about the demand, because actually those Eiffel Towers won't be there without a project. Now those projects are also navigating grid connection, leasing, project economics, technology choices, turbine availability. Vestas and Siemens, will you supply floating projects turbines, please? So if you add all that on, which is the demand, it's an incredibly complex environment for ports to sort of make these, and the bravery that you see in terms of these sorts of developments, we need that. And I think with France having public, your ports being public rather than private, which is what ours are, is definitely a beneficial environment to be in, and I would rather the UK have more public ports than private ports, to be honest.
Sandrine Gourlet, you are Director General of another French port, the Grand Port Maritime de La Rochelle, and you're also set to welcome floating offshore wind projects in the future. The government has put 200 million euros on the table to gear up French ports. Do you think that's enough?
Hello, and thank you. Perhaps I will just have some words about this story, because to understand about what we are talking about, you've got to remember that the French government made a public debate 2 years ago to decide where were the sites for the offshore aeolian farms. But the public debate only talks about the site of the construction, but never how it will be built, how we goes from little things to this Tour Eiffel floating on the sea and where it goes. And little by little, we just realized that we needed to use ports and French ports. And when we made studies, it was clear for us that we didn't have enough place to build this Tour Eiffel, this floating Tour Eiffel. As you told, for example, if I take the place which are close.
Can we see the slides? Yeah.
Yes. Perhaps. Oops. Which are close from La Rochelle. It means that we have more than 300 floating systems to develop to respond of what the French government decided to install just in front of us. So it's clear that our ports are not able now to develop all these farms. And we've got also projects, just like Jean-Rémy on the other ports, to be able to develop the ports, to be able to build these aeolian farms. And if you add all the needed for Saint-Nazaire, for La Rochelle, Bordeaux, Marseille, Port-la-Nouvelle, and so on so far, it costs more than 1.2 billion euros. And the French government say, okay, I understand, you need helps. I will give you 2 million euros.
200 million.
It's good, but I think it's not 200 million
200 million.
It's good. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of public money, of course. But it's 2 million euros compared to 1.2 billion euros needed to make all the adaptation for the ports, to be able to respond to in fact, it was a question of the French government. Help us to build all these farms, and that's the answer. So, okay, it's a good beginning, but perhaps we need some more help.
It's not good enough.
No, clearly it's not good enough. And in fact, we are in competition.
Oh.
Between
I
ports,
thought you were friends.
because we are friends, but we are all waiting money from French governments, and we know there is only. I know it's a lot of public money. It's a lot of French public money. Okay, but it's 200 million euros, and we need more, of course, if we want to be able to build all the fields.
Can you hold the microphone? Yeah. How are you going to wiggle through then? How are you going to make up for the missing money?
It's not only a question of money, it's also a question of organization and to be able to be ready to build it. For example, in La Rochelle, we decided to work with all the ports of the New Aquitaine region, from our region, with Bordeaux, with Bayonne, Rochefoucauld-Charentes, and La Rochelle, to be able to have a complete solution to respond of the needs of the industrials, to be able to build all these farms. And the goal is to be able to go to the build, to the maintenance, and to the eventual decommissioning of the farms, and to be ready at 2029. But the challenge is very significant, and it's true that the ambition is very strong. And so, as you see, there is a lot of things to do just very close to us. And so we work together to have a response of it. But compared to what you are doing in Saint-Nazaire, in fact, we were developing the ports for many times. So it means that we have a little to do compared to you, because we have already the places, we have only to build on places which already exist. So it's more easy, because we have all the environmental authorization and so on and so far. So it's not so complicated as you, because we don't have to work on the acceptability, on the environment acceptability, because it's already done for us for many years. But it's not so easy, in fact, to do. But the things we know is that if we don't finish the work for 2029, we risk to lose the game. We don't know if the industrial will choose us, but if we are not ready, we are sure they won't choose us, in fact.
You were saying it's not just about the money, it's also about measures that the government should take, right? Other measures.
Yes, and in fact, also little by little, as it was not studied how to build these farms, we discover difficulties day after day. For example, the military, the aviation services, they were consulted, but for the end of the story, for the fields, but not for the construction on the way to go to the fields. And they say, "But guys, how we will do? You are on the way from our planes. We have radar. We can't see it." And so we ask to the government, help us, because it's a national problem. If we want to be able to build these fields, it's not our problem, in fact. It's a collective and national problem. And so we've got the help of the French state to find solution to be able to build and to build in the ports and to keep it into the fields without having problem with planes, with military radar, and so on and so far. And I just wanted to say one more thing.
You were talking to me about a de-risking strategy that the government should take over certain parts of the development risks for ports.
Yes, and it's a question also to be able to have economic results in France and not only abroad. We went to Spain, we went to Portugal. We know that they are ready to run, also to be a part of this construction. So we have to be ready to be a part of this construction. It's also a question of acceptability. If the fields are here and the economical benefits are far away, it will be difficult to accept for population.
Thank you very much. Laurent Verdier, hello.
Hello.
So ports really are at the heart of your strategy. You are commercial director at French floating platform provider BW Ideol, and you brought a few slides, I think.
Yes.
Can you talk us through your projects? Do the slides work? Give us a minute.
For sure. Now I can start introducing our company. So we are in floating wind business since more than 10 years, and we have been developing
Can you hold that? Yeah.
two demo units, which are in operation for more than 6 years, one in France and one in Japan. We are finishing the construction of Ideol project in south of France, and we are also involved in developing a project with BEWA and Elisio in Scotland, and we are in more activities around the world. Actually, our main shareholder is BW Offshore, and together with BW Offshore, we are addressing the global floating wind market and also the power to platform market, electrification of oil and gas platform. And we are mainly focusing on in Europe and in Asia, mostly in Japan. We have strong partners in Europe, In France, we are with EDF and Maple. We are in Scotland, I mentioned, with Edition and BEWA. In Spain, we are with ELA1, and in Japan, we are with Tohoku Electric.
And how have you been cooperating with ports for all these projects?
So, thanks to the demo and these pilot projects, we have been experiencing a lot of execution model with the ports. So, of course, it was demo units, pilot projects, so it was good to execute, and there was a major focus always was to create some local content. And we have been working directly with the ports. So on FloatGen, it is a 2 megawatt unit. It was built in concrete together with Bouygues Travaux Publics. And the construction was done on a barge, which was at quayside, you can see on the photo. And this was performed locally, and the loadout was performed at the same place. In Japan, we have been manufacturing the floater in steel. The construction was done in Hitachi Southern Shipyard in Akita. And then it was towed up to Kitakyushu, more than 1,000 kilometers from the place it was built. Actually, a barge is good to float, is good to tow. And this was necessary to find the correct place to build and to find the correct place to make the final integration. But these were far away one from the other. And on the Olmed projects, we are building 3 units in steel. There was a willingness from the developer to build everything very locally. So they selected Matière as manufacturing place, which was actually not nearby a port. So the shipment of the elements has to be done by road, and 100 pieces were to be assembled at the port of Port-la-Nouvelle. So each time we had to adapt to the port, to the local content requirements. It was not easy. I think what the learning we have been taking out of this project is that this setup, none of the setup were really the ideal for the industrialization, for the commercial projects. So we have been working on a straightforward and game changer approach for industrialization for the projects in France and in the projects in UK.
You told me before this conference that you had also sealed a cooperation agreement with Ardésir that John mentioned earlier. Tell us a bit more about that.
Yes, actually, on the project in Scotland, we have seen that there was a potential to develop a production line for concrete floaters. And very early in 2021, we have secured some agreement with Ardésir, which basically give us on phase 2 of their land the exclusivity to implement a production line for concrete floaters. And the phase 1 is actually under development. Sorry, I don't have photo of the phase 1, but there is very good progress of the work. The dredging is completed, and they are currently building 600 meters of quay ready for the industry. And this phase 1 will mostly be for units, maybe bottom fixed projects, floating wind projects using steel components. And we are in phase 2. And on this phase 2, the construction permits are ongoing. And we want to be in position to have all permits in hand by next year, and to be in position to trigger a decision of investment for this production line by next year. And of course, we are going to wait, like the ports, a bit the project, the anchoring project, to start to make this investment. So the timing is of essence, but we are preparing everything to be on time for the first projects to be requiring floating foundation in concrete.
Do you think that kind of agreement could be a blueprint for other agreements elsewhere? An example?
Yes, actually, we are also targeting the Mediterranean market and French market in general. We have been supporting EDF Maple during the tender process of AO6. We have been demonstrating the competitiveness of our product, and we have been developing the same scenario. So for this type of production line, we need a minimum of 1 gigawatt of project. So we are looking for the next gigawatt to come, and this will secure somehow with the port this decision of investment. So what we are trying is to have the same setup, which is dedicated to the cluster, which are big enough to make this situation economic. But already with 1 gigawatt of project, we believe we have a very competitive product.
And what would you say is the most important factor? I mean, what would you say, how do ports need to gear up to make floating offshore wind possible and accommodate your technology?
Yeah, I think we have been touching base on the budget, which was not completely there to realize the investment which was required to start up this industry. And I think the ports sometimes are facing the problem of what should be my investment, for which technology, for which activity. And each port, they are planning, they are designing the dimensioning case being the biggest one with the most constrained technology. So what we believe is that it's important for the ports to invest according to the technology which will be needed on the first project. And we are encouraging developers to make an early selection of their technology. With an early selection of the technology, the whole supply chain, the ports can know what should be the first investment, not the dimension investment, but the first investment for the first project. So this is why in our company we are really working upfront. We are designing a floater which is standards, which can accommodate several projects, and a production line which can be replicable, so that it's coming as ready off the shelf for the developers, the ports to select. What we see also is that there are multiple ports which are needed. One for construction, one for final assembly, one for storage, one for wind turbine integration, one for storage. All these are multiple areas. We see, of course, the benefit of having the construction port being the only port to avoid logistic, to avoid carbon footprint, to avoid storage. So we believe that construction port and final assembly port should be the same. And we want, of course, these ports to be in the countries where the floating wind market is developing to minimize the local footprint. And second is probably what is needed is to use technologies or to use execution setup which are already proven. So in our case, we have been using and selecting the methodology of building concrete floaters with slip forming tools and skidding lines. So what you can see here are photos of projects which are actually existing, so not for floaters, but for concrete caissons, which are needed for port extension or which are needed for breakwater solutions. So actually what we believe is it's important to use something which is already have track record, which have experience, and which has demonstrated efficiency. We are recommending to avoid execution plan with very long logistic, when you never know what is the geopolitical constraints in terms of usage of the Canal Suez, in terms of steel prices, in terms of petrol prices. So being local is good for the economic, is good for the social benefit, is good for the planet, and this is what we are recommending.
Thank you very much, Laurent Verdier. Thank you, John MacAskill, Jean-Rémy Villageois, and Sandrine GOURLET. Thank you for participating, and thank you for listening.